I'm gonna come in here and just say, Turbo Twister is not as bad as you think. Yes, you heard me correctly. Turbo Twister back in the day was such a good ability that it had to be nerfed 10 times. It used to do 8 damage, absorb 15% more damage than it does now, reduce enemy speed by 50%, and last 5 whole seconds. Yeah, it was in need of a nerf. However, it just got brutal after the first 7 nerfs. From then on, it was just nerfed into the ground to the point where many believe nowadays that it is the worst ability in the entire game. And I get that. I truly do understand how people believe it's the worst ability, so that's why I'm here, to prove to you that it might not be as bad as you think. So, as I mentioned before, Turbo Twister was obviously used for upfront damage and close combat. Its damage absorption and high damage properties made it possibly the most overpowered ability in the game sometimes. If you saw a Toxic Brains, there would be a high chance that instead of trying to punch you and get overload, he would just try to use Turbo Twister on you. Because of all these nerfs that Turbo Twister received over the years, it's become an ability almost nobody uses offensively anymore. Of course, if someone is using it offensively, assume they're new to the game or they're just trolling, because Turbo Twister only deals 2 damage, with the ability lasting only 3.5 seconds. Nowadays, Turbo Twister can lash out a whopping, incredible, outstanding 16 damage before it suddenly stops. Yep, 16 damage in total. That number is lacking compared to the almost 100 damage that the old Turbo Twister could output. So now you know not to use Turbo Twister offensively, and instead, maybe lay off the ability. But to that, I say no. Remember when I showed you all of the 10 nerfs Turbo Twister received? Yeah, well, in the middle of all of those nerfs, for some odd reason, they decided to buff its overall movement speed multiplier from 1.1 to 1.35. I have no clue why they did this, other than maybe to give it some hope for the future since right after, they nerfed it an extra 3 times. Turbo Twister also has a damage absorption property, meaning it can absorb damage. It got decreased from 50% to 25%, but it still means it can absorb damage. Even though it's no longer 50%, 25% is still a pretty large amount of absorption. Take it this way. If you were to get hit by a beam bomb dealing 175 damage, leaving you with a measly 25 health, using Turbo Twister absorbs 25% of that 175, leaving you with 69 health. That is a big increase, almost triple your original health of 25. Take a different example. If you were getting shuck-shotted and insta-kill basically every time, dealing 250 damage, using Turbo Twister leaves you with 13 health. You might be low, but you're still alive. Now, let's move on to the movement part. Since the movement speed isn't a base value, but instead a multiplier, adding a speed upgrade also adds on to the multiplier. Let's first take the regular Super Brain speed of 7 meters per second. Now, let's multiply that by 1.35, giving us 9.45 meters per second. Now, let's put on a speed upgrade, giving him an overall speed of 7.35. Multiplying it by 1.35 gives us 9.92 meters per second. Now, let's use Breakfast Brains as an example, since he moves faster than any other Super Brains at base speed, 8.05 meters per second. Multiplying this by 1.35 gives us an overall speed of 10.8 meters per second, and if we apply the speed upgrade, an astounding overall speed of 11.4 meters per second. For reference, a pea shooter in Hyper doesn't even move that fast. Now for the last comparison, this one kinda just to see how fast a Super Brains can truly move, Toxic Brains in Overload moves an overall speed of an already crazy speed of 10.5 meters per second. Multiplying this by 1.35 gives 14.1 meters per second, and applying the speed upgrade gives us a shitload of speed, 14.9 meters per second. Almost a whole 15 meters you are moving a second. Usain Bolt, the fastest runner in the world, can't even run that fast. From starting with 7 meters per second to getting almost 10 with just an ability and an upgrade for a regular Super Brains really just shows you how much of a difference Turbo Twister can truly make. It is much better as a movement and escape ability since it has that absorption property. So maybe instead of them trying to make Turbo Twister worse, they maybe just tried to rework the ability and make it not offensive but rather defensive. I'm not saying that Turbo Twister is an amazing ability or anything, but maybe next time you're in a fight and you need a quick escape, consider using Turbo Twister instead of jumping around and hoping not to die.